A little while back, I was in Essex, which is where I come from, in case you wondered. And I was driving from Rayleigh to this cultural capital of Essex called Canvey Island. Anyone heard of Canvey Island? Anyone heard of Dr. Feelgood? Yeah, that's where Dr. Feelgood... I was at Dr. Feelgood's first professional gig when they supported the Hawkwind. How about that? Historic moment. Wilko Johnson almost knocked me out with the guitar. You know, he's the guy who sort of ran around with his guitar there. Anyway, that's a rabbit hole. But I was driving down to Canvey Island, really keen to see a friend there, and there's just one road down to there. And this lady in a car, she just stopped the car and just sat there in the car. And I was just getting more and more angry, thinking, what is she doing? You know, and I did that classic. I did it so that she couldn't see it, but just to myself, I was going, what? And then you kind of talk as if they can hear you and say, oh, come on, woman, what are you playing at? Then I tooted my horn, and she just kind of ignored me, and I thought, what is going on? And then I saw blue lights coming the other way. She'd stopped for an ambulance. And, you know, I felt a bit silly. I'm very glad. I just kind of put my head down, and then she drove off, and I thought, I hope she's not someone at the church I'm about to go to. Or, I hope I'm not going to see her somewhere. They could see something I couldn't, and I got angry because I just wanted to get moving, and they were in my way. Now, there's an old saying, people who fly into a rage always make a bad landing. You know, if ever you want to mess up, just get really angry and you'll say all the wrong things and you'll come a cropper. And actually, if that lady would have got out and tapped on my window, maybe that would have been me. Certainly, if she could have heard what I was saying, you know, I'd have looked a right old Charlie. And I'm sure you've been there too. Maybe not behind a wheel of a car, but after you've given someone your very strong opinion in a very strong way. Or you've sent out a WhatsApp message that you regret. Or you've posted something on social media. Or you've got angry with your children. Or you've got angry with your parents. There's a lot of anger about nowadays. People in cars, couples at loggerheads, parents and teenagers, parents and children. And I think that social media fuels it all. There's so much anger. It's so toxic out there. And it can become the boss. It can run our lives. And when that happens, everyone suffers. Well, as we saw, we're in this series, You're Not the Boss of Me. And it's really about how to get control back, control of our lives, by stopping the wrong kind of emotions and reactions running the show. And we've looked at guilt and envy. And as you probably realize, this week we're looking at anger. Now, when we think about anger, we usually think about, you know, flaring up, you know, the kind of people that, you know, we used to have a teacher at school, and we always knew if he was in a bad mood because he'd have a cigarette before, you know, and if he blew his top. Like my friend's mum, when she used to blow his top, he used to call her Hurricane Sheila. So, oh, Hurricane Sheila's coming. And you know, maybe you're not a person who gets angry like that, but you've been a victim of it, or you've been a recipient of it. But it's not just that. It can also be more like this, you know, that kind of simmering anger where you're scary, you know, you're silent, you're cold, you're withdrawn. It's like someone who's done that with me in the past. Oh, she's gone. Someone who's done that with me in the past, you know, they go like that. You know, they never say angry words, but I say hello, and they go like that. And it's kind of quite childlike, isn't it? Quite childish. But there's all sorts of ways we can be angry. And I tell you, this is my problem. I want to be completely honest because, you know, I'm not a person who doesn't get angry. But my problem is, you see, I'm really quite easygoing and placid. And I'm like that, you know, it's kind of boiling down in me. And then suddenly, in the end, the button gets pushed and whoosh, I'm back like that. Well, to go back to the car story, when anger takes the wheel, your life goes off track. And this week, I want to help you and myself let wisdom take the wheel. Now, I had a friend, he used to sit next to me when we were at Christian meetings and things and at church services, and if he thought something really applied to me, he'd be pretty obvious. He wouldn't nudge me, he'd go like that. Like that. And I remember I'd actually just had an argument with my parents. We went to this meeting, this youth meeting, and the speaker was talking about being kind to your parents, and he went like that. And everyone could see him looking at me. Now, this is the danger of a talk like this, because we'll all go like that saying, I wish they could hear it. I wish they could hear it. But actually, what I want you to do is not do that, but think, what is this saying to me? Never mind the other person. They can apply it to themselves. This is about us. Let's not deflect, because that's what we tend to do. To defend ourselves, we need to think, well, they are really angry, aren't they? They need to hear that. But actually, we all need to hear that, because anger can be the boss of us. And if you're not a Jesus follower, you don't have to put this into practice. But I tell you what, you'll find real wisdom in this that comes from our Creator, that's given to us in the passage we're going to look at in a moment. And as you heard, that passage is from the book of James. Now, I love James. James was, as Catherine said earlier, it was one of the first books that was written, one of the first letters that was written to early Christians. And James was the half-brother of Jesus. He was the half-brother of Jesus, of course, because Jesus was born of a virgin, Mary, and of course, his mother was Mary, James's brother was Mary, and his father was Joseph, so it made him the half-brother of Jesus. And he was actually the leader of the church in Jerusalem. And they had lots of issues they had to grapple with. And he was a really wise guy. And it's a fantastic book, because obviously he knows a book called the Book of Proverbs really well. And what he does is, when you look at it, he draws from that book and puts it together with a lot of Jesus' teaching from what we call the Sermon on the Mount, about how to live in the kingdom way under the rule of God. And you get just brilliant practical stuff. And it's helpful to us whether you're a Jesus follower or not. It's really helpful to us. So in that reading we heard earlier, James gives a question that hits us like a bucket of cold water. What causes fights and quarrels among you? It's like when you see people quarreling and you say, what is this all about? Those of you who are teachers and you see children arguing, you say, whoa. Now, what is it? He did it first, he did it that. And James is maybe talking to churches actually who are quarreling, because sometimes, believe it or not, Christians fall out, because Christians are normal and Christians are human, and sometimes things go wrong. And James is saying, okay, if you've fallen out, what's at the root of this? Fights and quarrels. What causes these things? And that word fights is battle language, two people squaring up to each other. I want my way, and neither will yield, and that's a big fight. And quarrel is the kind of sharp clashes that come from that. And sometimes we're left asking, well, what caused that? Where did it come from? Sometimes these things just hit you out of nowhere. I've found that. I've just been after a service or something, and someone, boom, they'll load something on me. You think, where did that come from? Where did all that poison or toxicity come from? James gives us the answer. Don't they come from your desires that battle within you? We always say, it's them out there, but actually it's me in here. It's about ourselves. And desires is all about inner urges. And in this context, it's all about wanting our own way, wanting to make sure that we're the one who's heard and not listening to other people. And that makes us react when we don't get what we want, argue with people who stand in our way, and create an unpleasant atmosphere. And James' point is this. The real problem isn't out there with other people. It's in here with ourselves. Because the battle happens on the inside, long before anything explodes on the outside. Now, I might have quoted this guy before, but he was one of kind of the mature Christians in my church in Portsmouth. He was a really good guy. But he used to despair of a lady who was just always arguing with people. And he said to her once, you know what? You are a walking civil war, you are. She could take it from him. And she was. She was always kind of at war with someone, at war with herself. And she must have had such a miserable life. And this is serious stuff, because when anger gets the boss, it seeps into every area of your life. It did with that lady. She fell out with her family. She fell out with her friends. She fell out with her neighbors. She fell out with her best friend at church. She fell out with everyone. It's your friendships, your home, your relationships, your family, your workplace, your church. Everything gets affected by that kind of angry attitude, because it doesn't sit quietly in the passenger seat. It wants to grab the wheel and take you places you don't want to go to. But here's the good news. Anger doesn't need to be your boss. You get to choose how you respond. You get to choose the direction. You get to choose a way of living that makes life better and makes you better at life. And this is where the text of James gets really interesting. Because if you actually follow the flow of James's letter, he often gives us the solution before he names the problem. Now, I've been on a holiday, I've been back a week, but when I was on holiday, I've read loads and loads of books. And I love psychological thrillers. They just kind of take my mind off things. You know, I've read I've read the first Housekeeper book. I've read the rest of the trilogy. Do you want me to tell you what happens? No, I might spoil the end. But, you know, Hazel was reading the first one. I said, oh, has she done it yet? Have you seen The Other Side yet? Have you seen Why She's So Overweight yet? But the thing with those thrillers like The Housekeeper and those kind of books is once you've read them, that's it. You know the ending, it's done. You can kind of toss them away, or I do it on Kindle Unlimited and send it back. But James is a book that you read and then you go back and trace it back and think, oh, hang on, what's he said? I need to go back on that. So when he talks about angry exchanges, he's actually sending us back to chapter 3. And this is what he says earlier on. Who is wise and understanding among you? Now, this is wisdom that he's drawn from the book of Proverbs, which is it's a great book. It's about how to live the right way, how to live as our Creator wants us to. And wisdom there isn't about learning lots of stuff. It's about living right, living steady, living centered, living the way God wants us to live. And a wise person doesn't let anger grab the wheel. I mean, if your 10-year-old was sitting next to you in your car and they said, you know, oh, let me have a go, would you let them? Would you let them? Of course not. Well, you wouldn't let anger grab the wheel, would you? The person who chooses their response wisely doesn't follow their impulses. So how do you spot that kind of wisdom? Well, James says, well, it just shows. It shows in the way they live. Let them show it by their good life. You don't need to go around saying, I'm wise, I'm living rightly. No, but you just need to kind of show that you're doing it a different way. And that will spread calm rather than create chaos. But how do we do that? Well, we've got to pay attention to what's going on inside. If you harbor bitter jealousy and selfish ambition in your hearts, do not boast about it or deny the truth. Bitter jealousy, you resent what someone else has. Selfish ambition, you want your way and your opinion is more important than anyone else. It's a me first mindset. I must win. I'm right. I need to get my own way. I've been here 100 years. I should know. It's like my son, my youngest son. I hope he doesn't mind me sharing this, but when he was little, he used to argue. I mean, he's a journalist now, so maybe that's, he was kind of getting ready for his profession. But he used to argue about everything. And you'd say, Matthew, stop being so argumentative. And he'd say, I'm not being argumentative. I mean, even when his brother would say, it's morning, Matthew, and he'd say, it's not morning. He'd argue with everything, but argue for the sake of arguing. But sometimes we can be like that because we want to be right. And it's interesting the way this is connected with boasting. Do not boast about it or deny the truth. See, the idea is there that when you've got these things in your heart, you're kind of full of yourself. You're boastful of yourself. I'm right. I'm the person who's in the right here. And actually what you're doing is you're denying the truth, the wisdom that comes from God. James says when we have that kind of angry, proud attitude on the inside, there will be chaos and division on the outside. There will be flare-ups. There will be regret. There will be damage. And that's what we're warned about there. But he pushes us to something different. The wisdom from above, that is from God, from heaven, it's also called heavenly wisdom, is pure. It's not adulterated by anything. Peace-loving. The objective is actually to bring people together, to bring harmony. Considerate, looking at things from the other person's perspective, full of mercy. If they're a bit out of sorts, to think, well, we don't know what kind of day they've come from. Good fruit. It always produces good things that honor God. Impartial. That's an interesting word there, because it can also mean open to reason. You know, you listen to the other person and think, well, yeah, maybe they've got something to say. And sincere. You're not just saying it. There's no pretense about it. That kind of wisdom doesn't let anger run the script. So then when you go back to chapter 4, it all clicks together. What causes fights and quarrels among you? It's not the other person. It's not the issue. It's not the moment. It's your inner world. And if it's governed by jealousy, competition, insecurity, me first, and pride, where I'm right because I've been here all these years and blah, de, blah, de, blah, every conversation becomes a battlefield. But if your inner world is shaped by heavenly wisdom, that's pure, peace-loving, considerate, submissive, full of mercy and good fruit, impartial and sincere, well, you walk into the same moments differently. Same pressure, same situation, same difference of opinion, different you. Whatever wins on the inside shows up on the outside. And that's why we've got to let wisdom take the wheel. Here's the big, simple, liberating truth James pushes us towards. Anger wants you to think the whole problem is out there, but the moment we start saying, I'm reacting because I'm not getting what we want, the moment we recognize that, the temperature drops. Your understanding widens. Your perspective returns. Anger loses its grip, and wisdom takes the wheel. Not because the situation's magically changed, but because you did. So as I come into land, I want to get practical here and give you 3 things that you can do this week. And again, if you're not a Jesus follower, you don't have to do this, but they will make a difference. And ultimately, it's by knowing Jesus that makes a difference, because this is the way he's called us to live. Firstly, catch the rise. You know, check yourself out and stuff. You know when you get in the kind of fight or flight, and you can feel it. You can kind of feel it in your legs. And you know that old song, I feel it in my fingers, I feel it in my toes. Love is all around. Well, you know, same with anger as well. You know, I feel it in my fingers, I feel it in my toes. I feel it coming through my nose. You know, you can just feel it. You can feel it. When you feel that, I mean, that's kind of natural. That's kind of fight or flight. Check that out and stop. Catch it. Okay, this is what my natural instincts, my fleshly instincts want me to do. But I'm going to stop. I'm going to take a breath. I'm going to take a beat. I'm going to have a moment of honesty. I'm going to think, actually, what's the Jesus way of doing this? How am I going to make sure I don't get carried away by this, but live in wisdom, live the right way, make the right choices? And then secondly, this is a phrase I use a lot, hold on lightly. What did James say that quarrels and disputes arise from? Your desires. You know, it's about what I want, and someone's in my way. That's at the root of it. My opinion must be listened to, and no one else's counts, because I'm right, because I know more. I tell you from my own experience, I got into an argument years and years ago, and it was about an issue with someone, and I said to him, I said, look, I'm the one with a degree in theology here. And as soon as I said that, I'd lost it, you know. And actually that antagonized him. Who do you think you are, you academic, proud person? And I know more Greek words than you do. And that's how anger gets stoked. Hold on lightly. You might know everything, but respect the fact that that person doesn't. And hold on lightly to your knowledge. It's supposed to be used to bless people, not put them down and push your own way forward. Sometimes wisdom is about losing your grip. There was an issue that I had once, and it was something, I was used to doing something in a certain way, and someone wanted it done differently. It really meant a lot to them. I said, no, I've got to do it this way. I have to do it this way. And I could tell there was some upset there. Neither of us were particularly wrong, but just, you know, it meant me standing down from something. You know, they wanted someone else to do it. And no, I want to do it. And in my reading, there was that story of King Solomon. And if you don't know, King Solomon was a king in the Old Testament times. And he was wise. He wrote the book of Proverbs. And 2 women came to him, a dispute about a baby. One baby had died, the other was living, and they both claimed the living one. And Solomon said, well, I'll tell you what, I'll cut the living one in half, and then you can both share it. Now, he wasn't really going to do that, but he was saying that to provoke them. And one of them said, no, just let the child live. The other mother can have them. And he said, well, you must be the real mother. And actually, I realized, if I really care about the church, if I really care about these people, if I really care about God's kingdom, I'm just going to let go of that and not worry that I'm not out the front. And I did. And I held on lightly. Now, I haven't always done that. I'm not waving my own flag there, but I learned a lot from just reading that, because God stopped me in my tracks. Hold on lightly. Sometimes the wise way is to give in, even if in your heart you know you might be right about something, to give in and let it unravel and be there. And if things do go a bit wrong, not to say, I told you so. And then get your eyes checked. Check your eyes. I don't mean these. I mean your eyes, letter I. There's a story of a minister, and he had someone come to him absolutely furious. Doesn't happen here, does it? No. It's absolutely furious. Someone was properly wound up, and they didn't like something. They said, I've never seen anything like this. I am so angry. This is outrageous. I'm not having it. And he just listened patiently, quietly. He didn't push back. And when they finally stopped, he said, now before anything else, can I tell you what I noticed here? You used the word I over and over and over and over again. I'm angry. I'm upset. I'm not having this. I want my way. He said, but did you talk about God? Did you talk about his honor and his kingdom? Did you hear it from anyone else's perspective? Now think about the last sharp exchange that you had. Were you saying, well, I don't like this at all. I know more about this than you. I should be listened to. Well, check out your eyes, because that's a good sign that you haven't got that wisdom that comes from above. Because James says that wisdom is considerate, that it's open to reason, that it listens to other people, that it's peace-loving and pure. Check out your eyes. So when you feel your pulse quickening, that script forming in your head, when you know you're about to let rip, remember, the important thing isn't what's going on out there, it's what's going on in here. It's in you and in I. And James says that's where the battle is. That's where the freedom starts, where anger stops being the boss of you, when you let wisdom take the wheel. I'm going to pray and ask the musicians to come out the front as I do that. Let's pray. And let's have just a moment of quiet, just to confess to the Lord when we've been angry and say, help change my heart. Oh, Heavenly Father, thank you that you are the God of wisdom, the God of peace, and pray that we would know your peace and wisdom. Forgive us when we get angry, and I pray for anyone who's sitting there thinking, oh, I've just got so angry about this. Thank you that you give us this so that we can go a different way, that we can have a fresh start. Help us to go the way of wisdom. In the name of Jesus, amen.